The people of Ayrshire are terrified. The 16th century is nearing its end, and hundreds upon hundreds of people have disappeared without a trace. When an attempted kidnapping goes wrong and the intended victim escapes, King James VI sends a posse of 400 men to the Ayrshire coast to find the culprits. And there, between Girvan and Ballantrae, they discovered the cave of Sawney Bean, leader of an incestuous clan of 45 cannibals who have been killing and eating the fine people of Ayrshire for more than 25 years. And now, in 2026, it is Ayr United's promotion playoff hopes that have gone missing. Friday night's 3-0 defeat to Raith Rovers sent them to 7 games without a win and firmly drags them into the cannibalistic battle to avoid relegation. Now down to 8th and with a run of tough fixtures ahead, it'll take a king-sized intervention for Scott Brown's side to climb free of Sawney Bean's cave. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I am Duncan Cameron, and basking in the glow of a very comfortable victory with me tonight, we have Robbie Weir. First of all, how are you, Robbie?
Yeah, I'm delighted to join you for the latest episode of Goosebumps here. Albeit a bit more sinister than that, I feel. Yeah, tremendous. Great start. I do think that with the BBC games, I know this wasn't on the BBC, but with the Friday night football, it's a lot more enjoyable when you start your weekend with a win and you've got it out of the way, and then you can go about and you can just saunter about on your Saturday. Like you've nothing to do. I wouldn't ever change Saturday football, but it's really nice having that sort of knowledge of like, I can go back and watch these highlights of Ayer's bubble bursting yet again. Great fun.
Definitely. We also got Graeme Meldrum as well. How are you, Graeme?
Great, eh? Brilliant. Just fantastic. It was such a fantastic Friday night. Love it.
It's funny, like one of these things. See, because we've obviously, after that run of away games, we were collectively in such a kind of negative headspace, and we were talking about, being really worried, and we need to get points in these games and all this kind of stuff. See, watching Ayr United in that exact same bit, that's all I've been thinking about. I've just been laughing at Ayr for the last bit of time. Like, not necessarily laughing at them, but like, it's
glad
like
it's no us. Just
exactly. That's exactly it. Like the kind of Schadenfreude, is that it? Of like, oh yeah, I remember when we were there a fortnight ago, and now it's like we are happier than we were. Put it that way. And we see what happens. They're only like everybody else. They're probably actually like one win away from not being any bother at all. But
sacking away.
Well, exactly. You watch them on Friday night and you think, you could wait a while for a win, to be fair. And I think, the next 3 games, is it Thistle, Dunfermline and Arbroath? Certainly it's those 3 teams. I'm not sure I've got the order right. Like that's tough going. And then after that, they're back into the cave again with games against County and Airdrie. Like, it's real, like, there but for the grace of God stuff. Like, it could have easily. So much of it's just in the momentum at the moment. But as I say, it's a much better mood with all things Rovers related. So let's jump in and go through and see where it takes us. So one change to the starting lineup for this one. Jay Rowe came in, I think, as we all expected, for Jordan Doherty at right back. But Robbie, there was also a little bit of a kind of mix-up on certainly the social media stuff. And I think actually sounds like possibly on the official kind of comment lines up as well, where Richard Chin initially was listed to be starting in place of Andy Winter, and then that was then corrected. When that was sort of rectified, be a little bit disappointed, or would that be too strong?
No, I was absolutely fine with it, in all honesty. Unlike the masses on social media, there'll be I think there's a very big clamour for Richard Chin to start games, and great that he got his goal, which we'll come to, of course. We're not going to skip that far ahead. But with Andy Winter, look, he's not done much, but at the same time, think of it from the perspective that Ayr United were down to their bare bones, and much in a similar way to Partick Thistle, they fielded a lot of defenders, and they had the young lad Mick Roberts was up top, who I don't think is an out-and-out forward. But it's at a point where you can understand Dougie Imrie's decision to stick with Andy Winter, and then as the game's going on, bring on Richard Chin, which to all intents and purposes has worked because Richard Chin gets a goal. And again, calm yourself. We're going to come to that later on. But yeah, overall, great to see the same starting 11 that it's done so well against Partick Thistle, albeit not getting any points out of the game, and how they performed against Ayr. It's almost like we've kind of fallen into this position of being able to discover, okay, well, Kai Montague is stepping up to the plate now as a 10. Paul Inseo is very much onto a game, and he looked stellar yet again on Friday evening. So overall, quite comfortable with the lineup, and even J. Rowe will come into the performances in a bit. But yeah, it was a good bit of redemption. Very different prospect, I'd imagine, facing Leon Dick compared to Aidan Fitzpatrick. But it's an understandable lineup. The change had to be made, and we'll come on to the game itself.
This is it. I mean, I suppose it is that it's with Richard Chin. There's a whole variety of different performances that you might get from him. I think chiefly us, to be fair, but we made a lot of that, the kind of World Cup Willie nature of it. I think it's probably overblown at this point. But with Andy Winter, you very much know what you're going to get. It's not going to be a 10 out of 10 performance. It's not going to be a 1 out of 10 performance either. He's going to do the job you ask him to do. I think it was a marginally less exciting lineup when you see that be swapped back again. But yeah, I mean, certainly I wasn't jumping up and down and throwing the toys at the parameter. It made sense. And I think it was a game that, and certainly I think the actual nature of the game kind of proved this to be true, but like a calm approach was the way to go. It didn't need to be like, let's go and try a whole lot of different things. So actually, you know what? Within reason, Ayr United might beat themselves a wee bit here if you just turn up and do your jobs. Graeme, are there anything else that you would have liked to have seen, and particularly, I mean, even thinking about Ayr United, any kind of surprises in the way the two teams lined up?
The biggest surprise for me is I was subjected to a myriad of messages from our second favourite Somerset Park announcer. And we've all seen it before. We're shite. Everybody's injured. We're going to be playing the kids, and you're like, I heard it. Yeah. The only thing that actually gave me hope was it wasn't a 16-year-old in goals, which normally happens to us and then we're guff. But you've heard it all before, and you've seen the movie before, and it was just great to have a different finale at the end. It was interesting to see that the Ayr had obviously stockpiled left-footed centre halves. So interesting to see three of them on the park. And also my favourite player, Nick McAllister, obviously got clipped for saying he was, dug meat previously. I feel like a prophet.
Well, this is it. Let's stick with you then, because Nick McAllister, an element in the first goal, I think we can say. Very much the perfect start for the Rovers. 6 minutes in, so Lewis Stevenson plays a long ball down the park from left back. Innes Cameron, I mean, that honestly nudges Nick McAllister out the road is too strong. I don't know what he does. It's so far off being a jostle or a tussle. He suggests Nick McAllister out the road, and then finishes with an excellent lob over Max Thompson. So, yeah, Graeme, talk to me about all the things that Innes Cameron does right here, and yes, also everything that Nick McAllister does wrong, please.
I think from everything Innes Cameron does right is he was born. Yeah, from then on in, I have been a massive Innes Cameron supporter for many a year. I think I saw him down at Stranraer playing on loan for Stranraer, and he bullied Davo. Absolutely bullied Davo. I think he was up front, and I think Kyle Turner was on loan for them as well, playing in midfield. And Innes Cameron bodied, 19 years old at that point, bodied Davo and I've always said he'd be a great player. Yeah, he'd be a good signing for us. Finally, I've said it about many players over my years of watching the Rovers. Finally, one comes in and has had a bit of a purple patch, so I'm going to cash in on that at the moment. But it's just the awareness. It's the awareness of going to go into the channel. This Steve-O's got the ball. It's going to go down there, and it was just a case of physically out-muscled. Apparently, an ex-Scotland youth rugby player. Who knew? And just that finish was sublime, absolutely sublime. It's no easy to lob. What is it? A 6'5", 6'6" goalie. But he did it, and it just looked effortless. Fantastic. 6 minutes in, 1-0 up. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely, Robbie. This one is this a better finish than you first thought when you saw it live?
Yes, absolutely. It's a ludicrously good finish, as I so far as we go and say. McAllister's funny because he's already looking to the referee to see what he can try and get, and while it is Colin Stephen in charge, and more on him in a little bit, he was just getting absolutely nothing out of that because there was nothing there to get. And Cameron does incredibly well because he sort of adjusts himself, gets it onto his right foot, and then just gets it away first time. It's, for me, I would probably put it up there as being goal of the season. I'm trying to think of what other strikes that we would have that would be in criteria. I think you have like J-Rowe against Ross County, Scott Brown's sort of ones against Aki's under-18s and against Arbroath, but it was just such an aesthetically pleasing goal to watch. Yeah, fantastic finish from the big man. Did tremendous well. And he's hitting a purple patch, as Graeme says. And just texting my mate who wasn't at the game, doesn't get to many games, so he's not been exposed to the full Big Innish treatment yet, and he will be next weekend. But said to him straight away, I was like, just love watching him. Just so fun to watch. Said it elsewhere after the game. He's like our Lyndon Dykes. That's the equivalency that I've put to it.
I really like that comparison, yeah.
He might necessarily not know what he's going to do next at some of the times, but when he's doing it right, like, you just feel that there's opportunities there for him to get the goals and to cause havoc among centre backs. And he's shown that again. He didn't get much change against Partick Thistle, but against the likes of Airdrie and against Ayr, and these games, and let's be honest, these are games of huge importance to us, given that before we went into them, a lot of people had written us off, saying, oh, Rovers are in trouble, they could finish in the bottom two, we might finish bottom. And as Cameron stepped up and he's delivering for Dougie Imrie.
Do you know what's interesting is, see when he brings the ball down and he turns, the crowd's up. You know what I mean? The crowd have totally bought into him. Because there was a couple, there was one in the first half, I think, he's gone shoulder to shoulder with the defender's taking a touch, and he's just basically bodied the defender out the way to win the corner. And everybody's up giving it yahoos for that. And then there was numerous times the second half, he's brought it down, he's turned or laid it off, and the crowd's up. It's, you know, who would have thought that would have been the catalyst for the crowd going mental would be Innes Cameron.
There's a second one in the first half. The second one in the first half where it's not dissimilar to this, where he's kind of challenging with the defender, and in the end up he kind of doesn't get the connection he wants, and it's kind of it's low and the keeper gathers it. The big difference between the two is the defender in that one is trying, and that's why, and it ends up, Innes Cameron basically ends up, the ball's behind him, so he wins it, but he's not at it all his own way, and so he's having to try and hit it on the turn. The reason why I wouldn't put this at the very top of the list for goal of the season is because the defending's not good enough. It's like, there's nothing Innes Cameron can do about that, but like, it takes away some of the sort of cachet from the goal, because Nick McAllister is pathetically bad there. He's nowhere near it. As you say, like, he's claiming to the referee, but he's like, I think I was fouled there. It's like, well, you weren't. There's nowhere near enough contact for that to be a foul. But even if he's not in the right place. That ball's going over his head regardless. Like, the fact that Innes Cameron actually engages him at all makes it look better for Nick McAllister than anything. It's just like absolutely abysmal defending on that. Like, I know, Nick McAllister goes off injured at a certain point, and they bring on Sean Want. Now, I know Sean Want's not had a great season. He's not got a great kind of reputation at Ayr, but he is at least a centre half. He would have, I'm sure, done a better job than that. I think just about anybody would. Crazy defend. And that, again, is the kind of thing that, see, if you're already 3-0 down and you're demoralised, that maybe happens. That can't happen 5 minutes into a must-win game. And this is obviously where, if this was an Ayr United podcast, it would turn into an hour-long conversation of, is that the manager's fault or is that the player's fault? It's like chicken and egg. Have the players chucked it or has the manager lost it? Well, I'm glad we are not having those kind of conversations, because if that was a boy in a Rovers jersey, I would be going absolutely tonto at that. It's ludicrous defending.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about people going tonto in fan bases, special mention to the Ayr United fan, the younger one who ran down the stairs after Ennis Cameron's goal before realising very little was going to happen from that point.
Yeah. More of an effort to prevent the goal than Nick McAllister put in.
Correct.
From that young man. So, as I say, that very much the perfect start for the Rovers. I think it was well deserved. I thought the Rovers had started well enough and with enough intent, but then it really that just set the tone for the first half. Not a huge bundle of chances, but there are still, as we said, there's one with Ennis Cameron where he's kind of on the spin, doesn't quite get it away. There's also one, Robbie, Dylan Easton in. Dylan Easton doing Dylan Easton things, I think would be the category, as he's cutting across the box and he curls it to the far post. Kevin Holt, I think it is, gets his head in the way. Do you think this is going in?
Yeah, I mean, based off the sort of footage that I've seen, because I think it's the guy Super Air, Callie, that does the vlog. Really, really good vlog. Well worth a listen. A lot easier to say that when we've not been pumped at Somerset Park. But yeah, his video makes it look like, from his position in the stand, that is heading towards the back of the net. And we didn't create nearly as many sort of clear-cut chances in that first half compared to, again, second half and the last two games. But it did show you that Ayr were there to be got at. Just in general, with the position of our players, Jay Rose came in for a lot of criticism after the Partick Thistle game about not being aggressive enough. And I know that I said this kind of before, talking about his inclusion in the squad. I felt that on Friday, he was getting forward at every opportunity that he could. It looked like the penny had dropped, and he was saying, actually, my role tonight is just to get up there and cause chaos. And he did everything that he could do to try and help with that as much as possible. Again, how much of that is that he's up against, with all due respect, Liam Dick compared to Hayden Fitzpatrick? He's not having to track back as much because, again, Ayr are lighter in the forward areas. But yeah, just good to see that. And overall, for the most part, it looked like that we were playing quite comfortably, quite confidently, until, flow starts getting a bit disrupted by these enforced substitutions through injury.
Yeah, the contrast I would draw with J Rowe there is back to the last derby at East End Park, where I spoke for about 40 minutes uninterrupted about Robbie Fraser playing left wing back, and then J Rowe at right back and Josh Millen in front of him. They just never kind of got to grips with that game, and the positioning was never right. And this was the complete opposite. It's much more. And I mean, I think you do have to recognise that Robbie Fraser is quite possibly the best wing back in the division this season, and Liam Dick is not.
I think there was a lot of Ayr were very narrow as well.
Yeah,
very, very narrow. Like if you think back to when they had a goal kick, so they had a goal kick, everybody was piled on the left hand side from us of the pitch to the sort of middle of the pitch. But then the goalie managed to slice it right down the middle, like so many times, which was quite funny because he'd been brought in because he was good with the ball at his feet. But Ayr were very narrow, and what impressed me was how quickly we were moving from side to side.
Yes.
The amount of space that Lewis Stevenson would get especially when we moved from right to left, he had acres of space, absolutely acres of space. They were so narrow, and we got a lot of joy out of that, especially that first half.
There was a lot of moving, the kind of pushing the fullbacks on as well, and then particularly on the right hand side compared to Tuesday night. J Rowe was quite happy to take up a higher kind of starting line, and then when Fordyce is getting the ball, he's stepping up 10 yards and just moving the whole team round. And Ayr just never really kind of looked comfortable with it. And I say that to me was a very deliberate thing, because it was something that Fordyce wasn't doing on Tuesday night, and it was winding me up. Because like his passing was really good, but he was like a netball player, where he was receiving the ball and then he was playing good passes, but only from where he got it. And it's like you push on the 10 yards first, and you can move it around a little bit. But I say they absolutely did that on Friday. And whether that was a case of learning the lesson from Tuesday, or whether it was just actually this team are not as good as Partick Thistle are, so actually we can be a bit more confident, we can be a bit more assertive, and that very much was the pattern of the first half. But yes, as you said, the other kind of notable element of the first half was the injuries. So Ayr United lost Nick McAllister for Sean Want, which looked like an upgrade to me, to be fair. But the Rovers, Paul Hanlon took a knock to his knee, which hopefully doesn't seem like it was too bad. And then Andy Winter, I think it was his back, more or less right on half time. Robbie, to start with Paul Hanlon, first of all, clearly a massive blow to lose a player as good as he is. But of all the positions on the park, we're pretty fortunate to have Dara O'Connor come in as an able deputy.
Yeah, I said that to Sandy that sits behind me at the game. It's the one area where you feel, okay, we've got that cover of a player that's admittedly been a bit out of form. I don't think anyone's going to sort of dispute that. But by the same token, it's not a player that's coming back from injury. It's not a player that's carrying a knock. It's a player that's fit, he's ready to go, and he'll give his all for the team. And even still, like probably up until the game at East End, like reasonably we've been solid defensively involving O'Connor, and he does deserve a bit of credit for that. So yeah, I was less concerned compared to other areas of the pitch. And again, it's probably exactly the same can be said to Andy Winter. We've got two wingers on the bench, so it's not too much of a concern. I felt it was, I can see Dougie Imrie mentioning in his interview as well, people getting a bit frustrated about the fact that we didn't sub Andy Winter and waited until half time, and it was a clear explanation as to why that was the case for stoppage purposes. So yeah, it was obviously quite intelligent on that part just to leave it as it was. But yeah, it's a concern. Three games in 6 days is going to be a lot for the squad, and hopefully having a week where we can rest and recuperate can make a big difference.
That's it. In hindsight, and it is in hindsight only, like Tuesday night would have been the time to rest players, but you don't know that going in. And it was never a case of like that. Again, in hindsight, that Thistle game, I think, is recontextualised as a free hit, given we won the two games either side. So actually, didn't matter at all. But, that wasn't the case going into it. That was a winnable game and we played well. So I think I don't think you could, if you were being critical, look at injuries in the third game in 6 days and say, well, hang on a second, should all of these guys have been playing all of these minutes? But I don't think that argument stands up to scrutiny. I think the decisions were justified all along. And as you say, maybe fortunate that the players that we did lose were in positions where we had, there's an option for half-time, could have gone with Richard Chin or Josh Mullen. But Graeme, I think the decision to go with Josh Mullen, justified by his impact.
Absolutely. That cross was just delicious, wasn't it? Absolutely delicious. I know we're going on a period of time. At half time, you seen Mullen was coming on. I remember saying to my son, we need to score in the first 15 minutes, or we need to not lose a goal in the first 15 minutes of the second half. So for him to come down that that side. You would have expected Scott McMahon to have cut the cross out in the first place. But delicious cross. I didn't even know until I saw the highlights that Innes Cameron had headed it down. I'd just seen his gorgeous napper hit the ball and it going past the keeper's hand. I never knew he'd hit it down and it'd come up, and that's how the keeper never got to it. But that cross was just asking to be put away. It was outstanding. That's what we expect for Josh Mullin. Probably don't see it often enough, but that was brilliant. Great goal, great finish. Thank you very much. 2-0, 3 points up the road. Lovely.
It's a really good example of what we were talking about before, where like J Rowe's starting position is so advanced, and it's the ball starts off. It's on the left hand side, and Niso just knocks it back to Fordyce. Fordyce plays maybe a 40-yard pass because of how advanced Rowe is, but then it means that all he needs to do is just knock it into the channel for Josh Mullin. He doesn't have to do anything clever because he's close enough to be there. And yes, it's an excellent cross. And Robbie, obviously, I want to hear your thoughts on the goal, but also that, so the goal goes in pretty much bang on the hour mark. That kind of 15 minutes between half-time and the second goal, Ayr's best period of the game, I think, would probably be inarguable. At any point, did you think they were carving a route back into the game?
No, not particularly. I think once we'd got ahead, Graeme clearly happy about that. I think once we got ahead, like even for the remainder of the first half, they'd been toothless. Like they didn't have a shot on goal. And then even at the start of the second half, we limited them quite a lot. Looking at the full 90-minute match stats, they had 4 shots in total and 1 on target. Like, just, they didn't look like they were really in that position where you feel like they're going to be dangerous or that they're going to... I think it would have required something quite almost freak or fortunate for them to be able to get back in at that point. I feel like the only real player that I was sort of noticing being a standout for them was Stuart Bannigan. But the ball goes in, and like you say, Graeme, you would think that it would get cut out by McMahon. It doesn't. It's almost like he gets that extra half second and Mullin's eyes light up and he gets the ball across. And with Ayr's defence, I don't know if it's because how young Finney is or because of how little game time Want has, but neither of them look remotely close to being able to have the ability to stop Innes Cameron. And fantastic header. Just really great to see us play in that style and to be able to score a goal where you see it coming from the back, get played out wide and getting across and into the box. So yeah, just fantastic. And then at that point, it's very much a case that everyone can sort of see this is only heading in one direction, this game.
Oh, that was it. If it wasn't, if the game wasn't beyond Ayr before that, it certainly was at that point. There was just no prospect of them coming back to it at all. I think the kind of 2 best chances they've got across the whole game are almost identical, and it's just a near post header at a corner, both of which go over the bar. There's no, Josh Ray's heart rate isn't spiked by either of them. There's never really any prospect of him actually being troubled by them. Just open play, they just didn't look like building anything. Just didn't look like there was any belief there at all. And even actually, to go right back to the first goal, the move kind of starts. It's Ayr in possession, and they're kind of charging forward. And I don't know who it is, but whoever it is, he can see that there's nobody in front of him, none of his teammates, and he just kind of lobs the ball into the Rovers half anyway. So this is a team without a plan. This is a team that just do not have an idea of what they're doing, of what their route to goal is, or, as you say, Stuart Bannigan's there in the middle of the park, and like, you know what his job is. You know what he's going to do. He's going to wind the ball back. He's going to be busy, but he's not then going to go and beat 2 men and stick it in the top corner. Like, he needs someone to give the ball to, and it just wasn't there at all. And I think as soon as it goes to 2-0, it really was a question of how many is this going to be? and it could have just as comfortably been 2. Could have just quite happily been a 2-0 win without breaking sweat again.
What I find interesting about Ayr is that for all the talk of last season and how well they did, and clearly they had a good season. They finished, 3rd in the league and then papped out of the playoffs by Partick Thistle. They got through a lot of that. They got unlucky with Anton Dowds getting injured, but then the decision making after that's just looked incredibly scattergun, shall we say. You had Curtis Main coming in for a high wage. He's now gone out on loan to Morton, which will probably give us flashbacks of when we loaned out Lewis Vaughan.
Crazy.
Yes. George Oakley, seemingly out with a knock for fluid on the knee, apparently. Although apparently rumours on Pine Bovril suggesting that with the pre-contracts and things like that, how that's moving. Again, nobody will know. It might all be conjecture. But in general, just they looked very, very rudderless. And I said to the people about me, I felt that at that point, like, I did think that we would get a 3rd goal, but I felt that it was probably likely that we would go on and get a 4th and a 5th. Without being arrogant or condescending towards Ayr, I just felt that probably very similar to that Tony Doherty team for Ross County, where you think, right, our tails are up and their heads are gone. Like, there's not... Lights are on, nobody's home though, with that Ayr United side at the moment, basically.
Which is interesting because there's a lot of experienced players in there, right?
Yeah.
Now, you hear a lot about experienced players will pull everybody else up and they'll go and they'll drive and they'll do whatever they did. And I'm glad you brought that up about that Tony Doherty side. I didn't see them. But again, there are a lot of experienced players there. So you then look at it and go, it must not be the players. The players must not be happy with something. That they're no there, bollocking each other and going, you need to cover this or you need to do that, you need to do the next thing. Kevin Holt's a leader, McMahon's a leader, Stuart Bannigan is, Ben Dempsey's the captain of the team. There's experienced boys in there that you'd expect to pulling the rest of them up, and they weren't there. So you fundamentally look at, is there something deeper than that? We don't really care because we got 3 points and we got actually our biggest win against Ayr United since my son was 12 days old.
Wow.
He's 18. He's 18 now, right? That's the biggest win we've had against Ayr United. I thought he was a Jonah, to be fair, with Ayr United games. So, absolutely fantastic. But that's how big that win is. That's probably why, if anyone from an Ayr United persuasion is watching this, why we've all got big smiles on our faces tonight, yeah? Because it is that big a win for us. But you would expect, you'd look at it and go, there's something no right there.
This is, I mean,
that's somebody else's problems, not ours.
Yeah, 100%.
I say this is why I think it's so. It's because it very much could have been us. It pretty much was us a fortnight ago. We had this big conversation about, when all you've had is away games, but you keep losing them. So, well, hang on a second. Are we bad away from home, or are we actually just bad and we haven't had any home games to sort of prove it? And I think we've been able to kind of put that to bed this week with 2 really good wins, and then actually a good performance and a defeat, which, given we won the other 2, is absolutely fine, and you can take that and you take the positives from it. But it's funny because obviously we've still got all those talking points. They're very, very fresh in our minds, and then you're seeing another team really running into the same problems, but worse, almost.
Yeah.
Like,
it's why I was almost very hesitant to get overly critical in terms of like we'd absolutely been on a poor run of form, and there was a lot going on about it. But also at the same time, I mean, here United and their current circumstances, and then an Airdrie team with Sean McGinney. Come on, let's be honest. We're not going up against prime Real Madrid here with Sergio Ramos at the back. It's very much like okay, so we're bad at the moment, but also other teams are going to be bad as well, and we're just hyper focused on where we're at too. And that's why it was panicked, don't get me wrong, but also as well, there was a lot of right, this needs to go, this needs to go, this needs to go. It's just like, right, okay, let's just calm down. We'll see what happens when we're playing teams about us. So, yes, again, a few results in there that aren't ideal. You don't want to go up to Dingwall or East End Park and lose, but by the same token, like, we've got a pretty good home record, so, yeah.
And this is obviously we spoke about a lot. It's that whole thing about the bottom end of that division, this division. It's everybody cannibalises each other. Everybody takes point off everybody else. But again, as we've spoken about previously, you don't have to be that much worse to not pick up points. Like, you can be 10% worse and not win in 7 games like Ayr have done, and suddenly from actually looking relatively comfortable in 4th, as the kind of favourites to finish 4th, as little as 4 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, before Dunfermline beat Aberdeen in that Scottish Cup game, their fans were pretty disgruntled, and they were like, we need to pick up some points here as well, and they have now gone and done that. But it's just in that time, as I say, Ayr United without a win in 7, and then the next 3 games they're playing 3 sides in the top 4, so they're sort of out of that cycle. But even if they were, if their next game was Airdrie and then County, like they've got in 3 or 4 weeks' time, I don't think you would back them. I think that performance on Friday was a sub-championship level performance. It wasn't you are one of the teams in that blob. It was, no, you are worse. And that's exactly it, Robbie. That was where County were when Tony Docherty gets sacked. And that's what they've been since then, is one of the teams in the blob. And they've just started from a low point. But, I mean, actually, no, let's just stick to this point and we'll come to the third goal in a minute. I realize this is a very Ayr United heavy podcast, but I think that was the narrative of that game. It was like the Rovers turned up and did their job and won 3-0, and you would never guess that was a side that had played 3 games in a week, and so much of it was down to how poor Ayr United were. But the thing I was wondering, Robbie, is I was at the game and kind of coming away, that single performance from Ayr United, was it worse than any we saw under Barry Robson?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was flat, but also I'm thinking back to the last time that we played Ayr United at Starks, where they gave us a doing and they were quite slick on the ball, but I don't think they needed to be fantastic because of how rudderless we were at that point. And then you think, oh, well, Barry Robson's surely going to fix that going into a derby at East End Park. And we were stinking the next week as well. But we took action to be able to resolve that, and we got Dougie Imrie in. And I know that, I mean, you think back to about maybe, 3-4 weeks ago, where people were saying, well, what was the point in getting rid of Barry Robson if we were just getting Dougie Imrie in? This is the reason why we've got Dougie Imrie in now, because we've been able to steady ship, and whether it's by design or by accident, we've came across a lineup that seems to do well, that can pass the ball about, that can, sure, it's patient at points, and we want to see the ball flying up the pitch and being able to get stuck into teams. But he's brought in Ennis Cameron, who's been a really, really good focal point that we've all been able to get around. Kai Montague is doing really well. Paul Incio has came tremendously well into a game. Yet another impressive performance by him. He seems to be quite the character in terms of like the team. You see him about all the videos at the end, and he's talking about 3 fucking points and loving it. Brilliant. It's great. And there's far more unity now, which is great, because the teams that are about us are now questioning themselves. I listened to the OTL podcast, which is the one that Colin and the guys for Airdrie do, right before they played us, and one of their fans was talking about how, but the Rafe fans are talking about how shit they are, and obviously County fans are talking about how shit they are, and etc. That's true, but now it's came to a point where we've got a bit of the belief and the optimism about us now because of the last few games, which is what you want at this point in the season. So fingers crossed it continues. Obviously, it's cup final weekend next weekend, which we'll cover on its own. But yeah, the self-cannibalisation will undoubtedly come back, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest in a few weeks' time if we sort of see the other side of it. But by the same token, we should be very confident going forward, because it's up to other teams to figure out how to stop us now, rather than us having to figure out how to start ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, so just a quick point. I know some of the clubs in the division do like an internal player of the month, and a Thistle do it. I think if you were picking a Rovers player of the month, I think it would be Paul Incio by an absolute mile for March. As you say, he's been absolutely brilliant. He's been really kind of come into his own.
A lot of comments about like we've been missing a box-to-box midfielder since Sam Stanton, and it looks like he's kind of fallen into that role now of being able to exert himself on the pitch. He has a few runs where he's sort of just gets on the ball, glides forward, and then all of a sudden the other players kind of come alive. Like you have Dylan Easton trying to find space out on the left, Stevenson getting forward, whether it's Chen or Mullen, those guys all being able to sort of make movements.
I think if Incio was player of the month, it's a different debate. Who's player of the week? Because I thought Kai Montague first half on Friday was excellent at keeping Stuart Bannigan quiet, just buzzing about him, no letting him be available to get the ball. You could see that kind of go in the second half, and it was probably a wise substitution to take him off. Maybe his legs had gone, and Bannigan was getting more influence. But that first half, he didn't let him have a moment with the ball. He was outstanding. Probably went under the radar, but I thought he was really, really good and effective at that first half on Friday night.
It's just good to see him getting more and more confident at this level of football, because that's kind of, I know it's kind of spoken about it before, about how like the comparison with Ben Stanley, but he looks like he's gaining that sort of confidence, which is great to see, because we all know that he's got the talent, and it's just about the more confident that he is, the more confident the management team will be to sort of say, right, first team appearances, you can handle that, go in, get stuck in, and then he can go off, and then things will come with time.
I think that goes hand in hand as well. It's both Montague and Incio. The better that each of them does, the better the other can be as well. Mm-hmm. You're not worrying about like, oh no, hang on, there's another young guy in this midfield with me, so am I going to have to do his? Is he going to... Actually, they've both really been very good this week. Although I would still be more inclined to say that Innes Cameron's probably player of the week Absolutely. Over the piece. Anyway, let's get back to this game, because we've still got the third goal, and I was really, really pleased to see Richard Chin get this goal, but also in the fashion that he did. So me and my dad have been talking about this on Tuesday night. Like he's so tenacious. Richard Chin, there's a couple of points. One of them was at East End Park, where he'd kind of overran the ball, and the defender was just shepherding it out for a goal kick, and it almost switched off. He was like, this is fine, this is just going to run. And Chin dives in and actually brought the ball back and nearly got us a chance in that game, which was, we didn't have too many. And I see this goal absolutely typifies it. I don't know how much of it's the Malaysian national team, like a tiger on their badge. They're very tiger focused. It's just Richard Chin's just taking that to heart. I was like, yeah, fair enough. Very tiger-like approach to the game. And I'd say this is where the goal comes from. He's running through, doesn't quite get it all his own way, but there are multiple Ayr United players on the scene. But it's Chin who's straight back up, diving in and forcing the ball into the goal. So, Graeme, talk to me about the finish, but also the build-up to this one, because there's some good football in this.
That was an outstanding goal. Absolutely outstanding. Now, I know Josh Ray isn't everyone's cup of tea, for some bizarre reason, don't know what it is. But that wee clip ball he does out to the fullback is so effective, absolutely so effective. Because the two centre-halves playing the ball to him, draws in their front players, Lewis Stevenson sitting there, and it's a wee clippy ball out, fantastic, brings it down, lays it in the midfield, and the movement and the passing in the midfield is brilliant. It's a great move, and I think you heard after the match in one of the interviews that was one for the training ground, it was good to see it work. It was, you could tell they've done that part in a play before. And the wee ball for Josh Mullen, just basically going, just chase me, Richard, just chase me, and Chinny's away. I thought he could have taken the shot earlier, because you could see, I think it's Finney coming in. But Finney decides not to tackle Chinny, decides to tackle the goalie, and ball pops up. And you're like, how did that happen with the ball? Because there's three guys going for it. How did it go through two of them to end up, almost at the feet of the other one? And then, as you say, the tenacity, just not to have the head down of, shit, I've missed that chance, but have the head up and the tenacity go, that ball's still there to be won, and stick it away. And there was a couple of guys sliding in and trying to block it as well. It was excellent, but looking at that, for the very start, I think Josh Ray plays a goal kick to Callum Fordyce, and then that's when it starts. But that chip ball out, drawing Ayr out, chip ball to the fullback starts it, and it's brilliant. And the coaches are probably sitting there just loving that as well. It was excellent football, great to see.
Yeah, there's been a bit of criticism sometimes recently about the Rovers passing the ball about the back line when it's been a little bit aimless. But the start of that is exactly the opposite. Like it's so deliberate, it's so pre-planned that is the strategy, and it is to move Ayr around, and it is to pull them out. And then, as you say, the ball that goes over to Stevenson, he just takes that touch and just opens his body up, that lets him play the forward pass. And it's that, as soon as that ball goes forward, it's completely unlocked. And yes, Josh Mullen, I think, deserves a lot of credit for that as well, because he's looking for that pass. He almost takes it off the toes of Dylan Easton. And then, yes, slide rule pass, I think you'd have to call it, for Richard Chin. Robbie, your thoughts on the goal, please?
Yeah, it's the benefits of having guys like Callum Fordyce in the lineup, and Insale does really well to just be able to sort of break the lines by getting it through the middle into Josh, he's done tremendously well in the sense that he's cut into the middle, just picks up the ball. If I was Max Thompson and knowing Scott Brown's viewpoints on goalkeepers, I'd be maybe a bit worried about some of the camera angles that Ayr United might have access to. I don't know if he's come out looking the greatest out of it or the cleverest. But it is funny when you see it, because it rolls out the other side. It's almost, if you watch the highlight back, it's almost sort of like a cartoonesque, like whiplash moment from Richard Chin, where he's like, "Oh, that's still there. I can knock that in." And he did. It was great to see, and the type of scenes that you want to see in the South Stand. Richard Chin is a thoroughly lovely human being, and deserves all the happiness that he gets from football. So it was great to see him get a finish, get a goal, and hopefully leads to more opportunities for him. I know it can't have been easy having that miss against Partick Thistle, feeling that you've not been able to get the point at the end, but to get one to sort of just round off and cap off a 3-0 win, delighted for him.
And fair play to the manager as well, because there was the talk of the Ayrshire Cup game. The Dougie Imrie obviously going through for the lapse, we'll call it, in defending. But he's shown faith in Richard Chin. He did. He came out and he criticised him, saying, I don't know what he was trying to do with that chance against Partick Thistle. But he's still given them, 20, 25 minutes of that game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's paid dividends. That's... Well, I've talked about this after the game. That's a Charlton Academy graduate is just totally ripped about 3 or 4 times down that wing, an Everton Academy guy. Totally ripped that fullback. He'll be having nightmares about him. And he's obviously no sulked in training. He's obviously gone into training, done what he's been told to do, and that's why he's still there getting chances and put it away. Fantastic. Well done, man.
I think it was something you said quite recently, Duncan. I can't remember what it was, but it's along the lines of, when Chin comes on, it's less about like the actual ability, but also more the bigger impact is who he is in terms of what he means to people. And I think that's still very, very true. Like, he'll come on and people are like, oh, it's Richard Chin. Like, he can come on and we know he's got bags of pace and he's got the ability to... What was it? Was it the one of the games earlier this season where he sort of had one that he just clipped off his heel when a cross got put in and came back off the post or went wide, and you think, like, you don't see that often at this level of football. Very raw, but people will buy into that and they'll forgive quite a lot, I suppose, when you're a fan on that basis.
This is like we spoke about it at the start about, going into this game, you've got choices on that right hand side, and Dougie Imrie goes with Andy Winter, and as he had, I don't like I find it hard to criticise because I think it's Andy Winter is much more of a known quantity. There's much less chance that he does something wild because he doesn't do like a huge amount actually, out of the ordinary at all. He's very much straight down the line. And I think that actually when you look at that, then you go, well, I think we should be better than this other side anyway. So let's have one less wild card in there. But then when you get to the point where you get 25 minutes to go, you're 2-0 up, they're already, they look very tired. We'd had the extra game, but they look very tired. The last thing you want, as you say, if you're the boy in the right back, is it Finney?
Yeah.
It's Finney and Turley, and I keep getting them mixed up. Like, their entire football club, their heads are down, and they're already 2-0 down. They basically have written this game off. They just want to get up the road. And here's Richard Chin coming on. That's just the worst thing. That is the last thing he wants to see. And there's a couple of chances before this that Chinny's involved in. And one of them, again, it actually looks like the ball's running out. And he just doesn't give up. And he goes, and you can see the defender is like, I'm pretty sure that's going, no. And he's then having to try and stick with him. And I suppose it probably is a case of, can Richard Chin nail down enough minutes to prove that he can then do that consistently to then deserve even more minutes?
There's something I think it's used a lot in rugby union. There's starters and finishers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's guys who will play at the start of a game to give you a foundation to then go on and win the game later on. And I think Winter's a starter. I don't think you bring Andy Winter on to win a game. I think you could bring Richard Chin on to win a game. But I think you've still got the risk of potentially, if you start him, you could be behind before he's ready to make an impact. So I think starting Winter's a good idea. Nice solid foundation. He's defensively sound. He'll do what you need him to do. He'll not pull up any trees. Certainly hasn't he so far. But he'll be solid. And then you come into the last 20, 25 minutes and you go, right, okay, boom, change. Because we've got to go for something now. We've got to this point where the game's still winnable, or the game is won, and then let's get them on. And for me, that's the difference in the two of them.
Sorry, Robbie, go.
Yeah, it's also, you think about the makeup of squads. Nobody's going to substitute off a right back for sort of, we need fresh legs. Where are we going to bring them on? We're not going to bring on a right back. You're bringing on a centre forward or a winger, which in a sense means that with that position, you've got the opportunity for your own winger to go out and be pretty devastating.
And this is, as I say, that's so it's almost like the next job for Richard Chin is to actually show, I am good enough over 70 minutes that actually you don't just need me. In the last 20 minutes when people are tired, I'm good enough to go at guys who are first choice, fresh legs, let me go and do that. And it'll be interesting to see, because we would all be absolutely delighted if he can go and do that. And exactly like right at the beginning of the season, that was kind of my sort of humbug concern, was like, yeah, you can do step overs against Lithgow Rose, but can you play 20 games on the spin and have a consistent impact? And you don't need to be there straight away. And what we have seen, largely I think because of his injury, is that he's been an impact player off the bench, and you need them. But as I say, for him, it's a case of, can you go and at this level or higher be a starter and do that damage all the time? So
it also spoke volumes with the celebrations. Like every single one of the players queued up basically behind them after the wild celebrations in the South Stand. Every single one queued up behind them to sort of say, right, well done, that's good.
Just to go back to something, Graeme, you were saying before, it's another Ayr United thing, I'm afraid. The players kind of not digging each other out. Now, I think maybe you could argue this, that by the time it goes 3-0, what difference does it make? That game is done. If Stuart Bannigan picks a fight with Liam Dick, is anybody better off? Maybe not. But during those celebrations, the kind of wider angle lens that you get, or the kind of long lens, it's Richard Chin and all the Rovers players celebrating in the background, but the foreground, it's Scott McMahon, Liam Dick and Stuart Bannigan. Three guys who between them must have 1,500 first team league appearances. and they're just trudging away, like almost to the point where it is the opposite of shouting at each other. They can't look at each other. They're just like totally resigned. And it's 3-0. They're not wrong to be resigned to defeat at that point. But like there's a lot of experience, because not in those three. Kevin Holt must have hundreds and hundreds of games as well. Like a lot of them at a higher level. And a real lack of apparent leadership there. And again, I think that would be your concerning thing, because that's probably, again, to draw the contrast, I don't think that's anything that we've said at any point about this Rovers side, even at its poorest points this season. I think at any point have we been like, Paul Hanlon doesn't appear to be leading the defence, or Scott Brown doesn't appear to be marshalling the midfield. We've had a lot of criticisms of various things, but I don't think anybody was ever accused of giving up. Players in that Ayr side had given up on Friday. And I'd say it'd be interesting to see whether that was just a case of this game's done, or whether that's a wider thing. But the game wasn't done there. As you say, Robbie, it looked like we could have had kind of 4 or 5. Again, I think if that's not a side who've played 3 games in 6 days and already lost 2 players to injury, potentially you get a little bit more as well. But still, two more kind of really good chances. Lewis Vaughan, as he does, finding space in the box and laying it off for Scott Brown, the good Scott Brown, who just kind of drags his shot wide. And then the very last kick of the game, Josh Mullen has one blocked where, again, it's Paul Incio, who I think was it's the same with the very last, very end of the game against Airdrie. Just Paul Incio was like, "Oh, is it stoppage time? Class, right? I'm going to go on a run."
Yeah,
just driving through, and it's almost like an embarrassment of riches with this one. He's got 2 options. He's like, "Oh, I could play Ennis Cameron clean through, or I can play Josh Mullen clean through." And I think, bear in mind that Cameron's on a hat trick, I think he would have expected that there, but it goes to Josh Mullen. I don't think he does anything wrong.
Yeah.
And the shot's blocked. But overall, Graeme, happy that 3-0 is a fair reflection of that game?
I think it was. It was definitely a fair reflection. We got 3 points. I think 3-0 was fine. We were clinical. I think we were clinical with some of the chances that we had. I've seen us have more chances than that and no score. So yeah, I was more than happy with that. I think the way for me, you were looking at this week and you were looking at the 2 games at the end. Yeah, it was a bit of a shit sandwich with a loss in the middle. But that's what you were looking for. The 2 teams round about, let's get 3 points off of them and let's set us up for the cup final, and let's, on the back of that, sell more tickets. More folk will be interested in going now, because if we'd lost that, who's going to be bothered? Nobody's going to be bothered. But we won that, and it was a really good performance. And those chances at the end as well. It was great to see Louis Vaughan and Scott Brown come on. So obviously their fitness is nearly there, and that link up that they had, really intelligent of Vaughan to lay that off to Scott Brown, was good as well. And you're looking at, okay, we had 2 injuries. Hopefully they're no serious, but you're looking at that going, there's actually a team there. There's a squad there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with most of the guys back. Hopefully Paul Hanlon is just a knock and it's fine. Andy Winter, hopefully it's just a knock and he's going to be fine. But there's a squad there now. Whereas 2-3 weeks ago, if something happened to Paul Hanlon, we were snookered, essentially, because Callum Fordyce was still out. So I think you're going into next Sunday really, really positive.
Yeah, I don't think it's been substantiated anywhere, but I think the mood music seems to be that Jordan Doherty's not a million miles away either.
Yeah.
You know, we saw him go off and you think, this is when you're close enough to the end of the season that it doesn't have to be a horror injury for you not to see somebody again. But actually, it sounds like that's not too bad either, which again just leaves us in a very good place. And yeah, it's going into that cup final, as you say, we will talk about it in full later in the week. But you know, when we won the semi-final, I think we were all a little bit like, this needs to be like a little bonus from a position of strength. What you didn't want it to be is a distraction from the midst of a relegation battle. And then we're not home and hosed yet. I wanted to ask you about that in a second. But on the back of this week, we can go and enjoy that cup final. I think the players, more than anything else, can go and actually think, you know what, we've put in some good performances there. 6 points from 3 games. Nobody needs to be worrying about the league form right now. They can afford to put that aside for a weekend, enjoy the cup final, see what happens, and then, get back to it. Whereas, if we'd only taken 1 point this week, for example, that would have been a very funny atmosphere for a cup final. It almost could have been slightly mutinous if we'd lost, which would be a weird thing for a Challenge Cup.
I feel like if you take 0 or 1 points from the last week and then you go into that cup final and you win it, you've probably got people going up to the players saying, but we still need to stay in the league.
Absolutely. You wouldn't actually be able to. You wouldn't be able to enjoy that. I think the players in themselves would know that you couldn't really enjoy that. You wouldn't be. Where is he? Now they can. Now you can have that as. I don't think the Challenge Cup is ever going to be more than a sideshow. That's very much the Challenge Cup's purpose. But you can go and you can enjoy that, and then, as I say, you still got to get back to kind of league business afterwards. But at least you can enjoy it for its own kind of merits on the back of this week. Robbie, just a kind of final one on this game itself. You said yourself, and I agree with you, that Tuesday night, was a good performance, if not a good result. What do you think was the biggest difference between Tuesday's 2-0 loss and Friday's 3-0 win?
I don't mean to sound sarcastic, but it's just the fact that we just didn't bury our chances. It's really as simple as that. I don't think there was a huge difference in terms of the style that we played. We created some really good opportunities on Tuesday, but we just didn't hit the net. In Partick, once they got a goal ahead, they did sort of marshal things really, really well, to their credit. But if we'd came away from a point on Tuesday against Thistle, I don't think anyone would have sort of said, Rovers have grabbed a point right very luckily at the end of that game. It would have been like, all right, watch the highlights for that. And I actually seen that Rovers had a good few number of chances, just couldn't make it stick up the top end. And then they managed to get an equaliser late on. I still think that's the type of performance that we can take a lot of confidence from, that we made the league, the second highest team in the league come to Starks Park, and they've had to really scrap to be able to get their win. And you can tell that win meant a lot to the Thistle fans by their reactions and how they were posting on social media, somehow still mentioning the cartoons, which is just remarkable stuff. Good job they're not upset by them. But it's just the type of game where you can look back and you can sort of still see the importance of the performance rather than just looking at the result. And I think that's probably been the message after that game from internally within the club to the squad. Didn't lose sight of that was still, we did well in large stages of that, and we just, to a degree, been unfortunate, and that it will click, and it has clicked the following game. So fingers crossed it'll click again next Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, to answer my own question, I think the biggest difference between those two games was the quality of the opposition. And I don't mean that just in a dismissive Ayr United a terrible way. What I mean by that is, play Partick Thistle on the Tuesday night, and Partick Thistle are really good. Comparatively speaking, they're the second best team in the division. And you go and, as you say, run them really close. Yes, it's 2-0 in the end, but the second goal was right at the end. We had chances prior to that. And I think there was if this was the case, I think it would be justified if after Tuesday night, the basic message was, go and do that again, because we're not playing Partick Thistle again. We're playing a side that currently is a fair bit worse than that. And I think that was what then transpired, effectively. Graeme, in terms of the wider picture, we have, all three of us, have been very comfortable and very confident throughout this conversation. There are still, 6 games to go? Is our is our confidence, 5 games to go for us, is our confidence potentially misplaced? Or are we? Are you happy enough to nail your colours to a particular mast at this stage?
No, I think I said March was a mad month of March, and I wouldn't panic till the end of March. I'm not panicking. I think Friday was a didn't lose, but if you win, it means one of those must-win games we've got further down the line. You don't need to win either because you've done that. You've won. Yeah, I think if we didn't win on Friday, we have to beat Morton. I now don't think we have to beat Morton. Yeah. So I would have said you had to beat Morton, you had to beat Queen's Park, you had to beat Ross County. Because we've got that win in the bag already, there's only 2 of them you have to win. And by the time the Ross County one comes along, you might not even have to win that anyway. So I think it's better. We've got the points in the bag. And I'm quite happy. I thought the performances the last week as well give you that confidence. I think if you'd scraped that with, an own goal or the ball hitting off somebody's backside and going in, you'd be kind of going, I don't know, we've got the luck there now, I'm not too sure. Whereas I think the level of performances, and to be fair, for the level of performance we've had, and I think Lewis Stevenson especially, I think there was maybe the last 10 minutes, that young Ayr guy, was it Turley from Celtic?
That's one eye.
There's a 50-50 and they're both going for it. And Lewis Stevenson, who's now put in, by that stage, 260 minutes worth of football over the week, and is 38 years old, ripped the guy. Yeah, now that's fitness and that's desire as well. And if these guys have that desire to keep going, I think we're going to be fine. I honestly think we're going to be fine.
Yeah, Lewis Stevenson, by the way, a contender for Player of the Week as well, for just the consistency of performance over that. Like, and not, set aside his age, doesn't matter. That's just performance alone. He was excellent all week, and an assist on Friday to add to that. Robbie, do you agree with Graeme's assessment of the overall picture there?
Yeah, I look, next Saturday has got all the hallmarks for an intriguing weekend in the Championship again. You've got Ayr hosting Partick Thistle, who, again, seem to have turned a corner in their away form. Then you've got Dunfermline hosting Morton, so that's going to be one where either Morton are getting points taken off them, or Dunfermline, who are above us, are getting hamstrung, or both teams dropping points. And then you've got the one down the bottom, the battle down there with Ross County and Ayrshire, where someone's coming away dropping points out of that, whether it's both teams or someone's leaving with 0. And I think that's going to be, it's very much last chance saloon for Ayrshire, because if they lose that, that's them gone, effectively. And that would haul County further up. Even if Ayrshire do win that, I still feel that they've got a very, very difficult run for the remainder of their games. Then after that, you're going into Ayr against Dunfermline in a midweek game. We don't know if Scott Brown will still be in charge of Ayr or whether they'll have got players back from injury at that point. And then we go into again, if you're talking about the cannibalisation, we've got Queen's Park against Ross County on the 10th of April. Ourselves against Morton that day. So you're looking at, again, teams dropping points. And I think that's why it's going back to sort of the reason that it's been sort of cammed across the next few weeks. I think that it's less about worrying about where we're going to finish in terms of a relegation position, because I feel confident to say that, in the sense that we seem to be hitting a bit of form. We seem to be scoring goals as well, which is great. Admittedly, didn't hit the back of the net against Thistle, but easily could have. But then the other 2 games we scored 3. And the fan base is a bit buoyed. If we can win a cup, that will absolutely help in terms of everyone's confidence going forward. But we should be looking in terms of finishing as high as we can. Now, that's not necessarily going to be 4th place. I think that's going to be a big ask, given Dunfermline's who they've brought in. Yeah, but at the same time, 5th place in a cup win, you would take that at the start of the season in a sense of, look, everyone wants to finish 4th, but we also know about how some of their teams that we might have just played actually on Friday had their biggest budget in how many years was it, Graeme? I'm sure you'd be able to fill us in on that.
I think in August it was 20. I don't think it was 20 in December. I think we did kind of calm down the expectations with things.
Changed to competitive.
Graeme Matthew was very clear that they hadn't budgeted to finish 7th, which is fine because they're now 8th.
Graeme Matthew's an interesting one, right? Because Ayr have had all these keepers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a podcast during the week, and it was Graeme Matthew going on about how he got Conrad Logan in for Hibs.
All right, okay.
And he got him in last minute and obviously played in the semi-final for Hibs when he drew with United. And then obviously he had butterfingers when Harry Panayiotou scored that header, but redeemed himself in the cup final. So it's interesting how at that point Graeme Matthew can just pull a goalkeeper out of thin air. But now...
Well, to be fair, they've had 8. It's not if I want to try it.
It's not the lack of goalkeepers that's been the problem for them. It's been the overabundance of...
Yeah, Huddy goalkeepers. But yeah, the thing with me, with the division is, again, something I've said before. But so we're now 5th, right? And everybody talks about points. So can you get to 40 points? 40 points is the magic number. Maybe this season it'll be 38 points. And actually, points doesn't matter. It's how many teams can you finish above? And is it more than 2 of them? And we're now, there's 5 teams behind us. So setting aside the overall points totals, could a couple of those sides finish above us? Probably. Could 4 of them? You'd have to think it's quite unlikely. That gives me more confidence than going, oh, it's this or it's that. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the bottom 2, so what, Ayrshire are 9 points behind us now at this point, and County are 8. County have got 5 games left. I mean, it's not inconceivable by any means at all that County pick up fewer than 8 points in total. You know, like, I don't think we should do this, but there is a reasonable chance that the Rovers could hit the beach now and still stay up.
Well, that's
just by virtue of other teams not picking up enough points. And so it is probably now at the point where you go, one more win will do it, particularly if it's against Morton or against Queen's Park, because you're then, taking points off them. But yes, not home and hosed, as we've said. And yeah, I think 4th is gone. Just 4 points, and Dunfermline got 2 games in hand. I don't see it. Even if we still had a derby to come, where you think you could really dial the pressure up with a win, but nah, I don't see it. I think
this is the thing though. Even last season, like we managed to claw back Partick Thistle so much, and belief's such a huge thing. Like, just the only thing we can do is just look after ourselves, and if the best that we can do out of that's finishing 5th, then so be it, and we reset in the summer, and then we can start looking at the bigger picture. And we've all known across the season that away form, lack of goals are the 2 things that are basically holding us back. If you look at our defensive record across the piece, we've actually got a really comparative defensive record compared to the teams in the top 4. So yeah, it's just, we know where we're at and what needs done. Just, if we get to the summer and we take a 5th place finish and we have a cup, as I say, I'd be absolutely fine with that.
I love supporting the Rovers, and I love football, because a week ago we were like, I'm quite happy getting 8th, and now I want 5th and I want a cup win. Thank you very much.
Why not though? Why not, people?
Absolutely.
Why not? If you're
behind you,
I'm
100% behind you.
Aye, it's just, there's a real lack of that as well at times. It's just, it's very easy to dwell on the other side of it.
We've seen it all before, right? We've all been going long enough to see it all before that we do get relegated and all that sort of thing. And you know what? You kick stones and you're grumpy and do a lot of navel gazing during the summer, but you still go in August. Yeah, and we would all still go in August. It's not where you want to be, but you still go. But it's great to be looking at that positivity and going, excellent, we've had a fantastic week. Let's keep going.
This is it. And more so than that, we've had a fantastic week. Let's go to a cup final.
Yeah.
Don't come around very often. This is, it's all very well and easy to scoff at the Challenge Cup, but Dougie Imrie was like, I've never been to a cup final before.
Yeah.
However,
it's just, as a manager.
We've not been to many. My aforementioned son, who's only 18, has been to 4 now. That's mental. He'd have been to 4 cup finals. What's that all about? Youth of the day. Don't know the ball.
I think I might have only been to 4 as well, and I am significantly older than Cammy is. So I think there was a fallow period for quite a while there. But yes, it is now. It's full on cup final fever, and that is the best thing about this week. As we sit here just now, is I think the players have earned the license for cup final week. And they can just go and enjoy it for what it is and not have to worry about the league and worry about, oh God, what are we going to go back to and all that kind of stuff. You focus on the cup final. You go and you enjoy it, you do your best, you see what you can do, and then, as I say, hopefully, it would take a disaster after this point for things to get as bad as they were. So I'm really pleased with that. I think the players, it's been a long, tough season. They'll not have enjoyed large parts of it, I'm absolutely sure. Yeah. But they can go and enjoy this week. And actually, as you said, Robbie, you see the celebrations at the end of the game. There's no lack of togetherness there. So you would hope that there will be a real kind of buzz about Starks Park this week, which is good, because there's nobody in this Rovers side that I don't like. I really, they seem like, good eggs. So I'm glad that they're going to get to kind of look forward to a cup final kind of carefree, I suppose, and that we can do the same.
I'm just going to check with you now. We're just going to do rock, paper, scissors for who's going on with Scott during the midweek and his solo appearance.
Well, we'll check the rota and see whose shot it is. It's, poor Scott keeps having to do 2-man pods. But no, I suspect that given it's a cup final, the podcast roster might not be as slim as it is when it's like, oh God, we've got to slog through another.
Sorry, Scott, we've not got space for you this one.
But yes, we will see. I have no idea who it will be, but or even when it will be, given it's a Sunday. That puts the usual schedule. We could do Wednesday, could do Thursday. Time will tell. There is absolutely no need for us to be discussing this during an episode. This is just admin at this point. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Once we've sorted out that admin, we will be back later in the week with the big cup final preview, which should be a real treat on Sunday at Firhill. So thank you, as always. We will speak to you again soon. Goodbye.